Thank you all. You can be seated, young ones, if you want to. Children's area is open. You're welcome to go join over there. My name is Pastor Cary. I'm lead pastor here at Living Oaks. Thank you guys for being here. Sorry, they kind of changed everything behind me and in the screens right now, so we're still kind of figuring out how this new setup works. Good news is we know how to order parts really fast, so next week we should have it figured out. But in the meantime, I'm going to be trying to get all this stuff set up without messing it up. Go ahead and open your Bible app to Luke chapter 10. What we're going to be doing over the next 3 weeks, and there'll be a break Sunday in there. Those of you that are new with us, every 7th week we just take it off for our volunteers to have a rest and a break from all this setup and teardown. But for 3 Sundays, we're going to be looking at the family of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They're a sibling group that show up quite a bit in the Gospels. It turns out to be very close friends of Jesus as time goes on. And there's a lot of really interesting things that they pull out for us, unlike all the other teachings Jesus has to the crowds. The teachings he has about his very close friends, it's just very fascinating. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 10, kind of learning where we first meet Mary and Martha, the sisters. And what we're talking about is this idea that Kristen already mentioned is you and I can feel fine in a whole bunch of ways. Physically, we can feel not sick. We can feel not feverish. We can feel all sorts of things that let us know like, oh, I'm healthy. But at the same time, we can also feel deep inside in our hearts and our minds, man, something's just off. Something does not feel right. Something actually feels wrong. Something feels like I am sick, but it has nothing to do with my immune system. And a lot of that, what I think it comes down to, and things I've been reading, is a lot of it is just we live in one of the craziest, hectic times in history, surrounded by tools to make us work faster than ever at all the things we have to do. And so because we figured out ways to free time in our lives, we haven't used that extra space to work on feeling rested, to work on connecting with Jesus hard, to work on being poured into ourselves. What we've done is we've taken the empty space and we filled it with more things to get done. Usually it has tied to do with our jobs and making more money for our families or something like that. And so because we don't give ourselves much space to just be with our Creator, turns out we feel bad. We feel off. And then if you're like many of you who I've talked to about this very issue, then we start to wonder if we're even good at just being us. And we start to develop kind of mean doubts about ourselves. And we start to think we're letting people down who we love or who we admire. And then eventually it bleeds over into what we think God thinks about us because we know we're not keeping up with Him either. And so now we kind of lean into these doubts and thoughts that maybe He's angry with us or upset with us because we didn't take care of the people we loved. We took care of all these other distracted things. It reminds me of a summer I had in college where for whatever brilliant reason I decided to make as much money as I could. If I remember correctly, I was trying to save up ring for a diamond, but I didn't do a good job of that, so I don't know what I spent all that money on. There was some memorabilia that was bought. I do know that, some comic book stuff. But I remember that was the summer I decided I should get 4 jobs at the same time and do school. And so I did. I had interesting jobs, fun ones. I worked at the movie theater. So my Friday nights were always there. And then I worked for a tourism riverboat as a deckhand. So my Saturdays were always there. And then I was an intern for a youth minister at a church. So my Sundays were always there. And then the other days of the week, we just kind of picked which job needed me the most. And I would be there and take classes. And I remember things must not have been going well because I would unexpectedly cry at some of the dumbest movies known to man. And I'll never forget So Danielle was gone that summer. She was out traveling doing this really cool comedic troupe ministry. She went all over the place, all the way to Switzerland and then all sorts of places. So she wasn't around there to be kind of a person to help me balance some of these deep emotions off of. But I remember really wanting to see Lilo and Stitch, and so I just picked a time that I had free and I watched the cartoon, and there was some random scene where the alien Stitch just opens up a book and looks to the sky and says, "I'm lost," and for whatever reason I just broke down. Me and these random children and their parents, and then weirdo single guy in the back crying. That was my first clue, like, hey, I might not be in a good spot right now spiritually. So found some space, went to a revival that I knew was going on because it was one of our friends who had preached to us when we were teenagers, and so we made some time to get out there. And he did the parable of the seeds, and talked about when the seed fell on the ground that was surrounded by weeds and bushes and thorns, and basically said that seed got choked out because all those things surrounded it. And he asked this really great question that has stuck with me for years, and he basically just asked us all, is your heart crowded? And I'd never heard it phrased that way. And very much so, I knew, yes, my heart was crowded. Now, I'm one of those people whose dad really emphasized on them, you don't quit on people. So I finished out the summer with all the 4 things. But I do remember later in the fall telling the riverboat I'm not coming back. And I'd been there for a long time. I'm still really good friends with the owner of that place. But I remember it was a sad time. Having to just say, I don't have room. So I got to even say bye to good things so that I can make room for the main thing. There was a really interesting study done by the Health and Human Services Department in 2025. The State of Mental Health in America report said nearly 23% of adults, over 60 million people, experience a mental illness in the past year. Furthermore, recent polling showed that 41% of adults anticipate that their stress levels are increasing year over year and expected to increase the next year, largely driven by the hustle of the economy and the pressure of constant connectivity to it. So as we add more and more to our lives, we stop making room to breathe. And our minds and our hearts begin to creep in with fear that we're letting people we love, respect, and desire down. And we begin to believe we're unwanted by them. And we even believe over time that maybe we're not wanted by God either. So how do we get back to feeling more secure in who God has saved us to be? That's what we'll be looking at in Luke chapter 10. In Luke chapter 10, we'll be in verses 38 through 42. Jesus is very much in the thick of his full-blown ministry, revealing himself as the Son of God. In that chapter 10 earlier on, he sent out 72 people basically to spread the word of who he is. They perform miracles. They come back and give a report. Jesus does this thing that he continually does, which is run into religious leaders and then make them very angry by the things he says. And then he just goes from town to town within Israel, telling them the good news of his kingdom. So that's where we are when we run into Mary and Martha. And again, I want to remind you, a few months back we did a study on when Jesus turned water into wine, and we talked about why it was a big deal to that culture is, for whatever reason in that time period, in that place, hospitality culture was your badge of honor to the community. If you weren't good at welcoming and hosting people, especially strangers who have come in, it dinged your reputation pretty bad. So keep that in mind as we read this text. So we're going to read Luke chapter 10, 38 through 42. While they were traveling, he entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who also sat at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came up and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand." The Lord answered, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her. As Kristen said earlier, today our main point is we have plenty of things to worry about. Being loved and welcomed by the Son of God should not be any one of those things. Or as the great Jay-Z once put it, I got 99 problems, and Jesus' love being given to me is not one of them, or something like that. I don't really remember how it goes. Glad to see we got some Jay-Z fans today. All right, first point is we are distracted. In verse 40, Martha is told by the Son of God, you're very distracted. You're very worried about many things. I think if we were to take some time, you adults, you're very distracted and worried about many things. Some of you teenagers, you're very distracted for sure. I don't know how many things you're worried about, but I'm sure you've got a few, but you're very distracted. And when you think about it, what is the cause of all of this focused, stealing type of energy that's coming to the front of our faces every day? What is grabbing at our attention? And what benefit is it serving us? Again, it usually just comes back to us trying to make money of some sort, or us trying to be connected to a community of people we really desire their affection. But either way, we have a lot going on, just like Martha does here. Hosting a bunch of people spontaneously cannot be easy. There is no store to make a trip to buy a bunch of things that would be ready. She's got to make all the food, make all the people feel welcome, find places for them to sit. We know when Jesus walked around, crowds followed, sometimes filling up a house too much. So she's just distracted with, oh no, there's people who are now looking at my reputation in this community. Am I going to step up and meet their expectations, including one who I think is the Son of God? These are big deal worries that she has on her mind, and she's flooded by the worries, and she can't help but notice her sister doesn't seem to be bothered, even though it's very much her house too, her reputation as well. And instead of turning to Jesus and just saying, I need help, instead of turning to Jesus and saying, I need a break, or turning to Jesus and saying, I just need you, she turns to Jesus and says, will you get on to my sister? Will you make her do something? Will you get on to other people? And I think that's part of the weird thing that we run into as well with these worries, with these anxieties. We have so many things that grab at our attention. They increase our cortisol levels. Stress goes up. And what inevitably happens is we start to lash out somewhere. That energy has to get out somewhere. And so we start pushing it out towards other people. And it's never in a kind way. It's usually in a, I'm very upset with you way. Even though the reason is small, the emotions are big. And so what do? We hurt a relationship that we find valuable. We hurt it so much that now we have a new stress to worry about. Getting a relationship put back together. And so we add that to the list of things that have to get done, that drag us down. So when you look at all the things in your life that you're called to do, be, and serve at, it's distracting. But what is it distracting us away from? Well, that's what Jesus is trying to point out to Martha is the one main thing. And we'll talk about that in point 3. And the one main thing is just Him. He's the whole reason we're even on the planet. So He will always be the main thing. There's a psychologist, and sadly he has the most epic last name I've ever seen. I cannot pronounce it. Starts with a C, has 16 letters. I feel like 20 of them are consonants. So I'm not going to pronounce it. But just know I'm not making this guy up, okay? This is what he says. Whenever we're unable to concentrate, we feel restless and dissatisfied. Our attention is our most important tool in the effort to improve the quality of experience. When it is unfocused, the mind begins to dwell on unpleasant things, and we feel a sense of inner disorder. So what do? That inner sense of disorder, where things are just not where they need to be. The puzzle pieces are not connecting the way they're supposed to in our hearts and minds, and we're just off. We're not happy even though we should be. We have all the things that we're supposed to have to be happy, but we're still not there. Why? I don't know, but Jesus seems to point the way. So point number 2 is stressed out but connected Jesus. I told you just a section of what happened in chapter 10. There's 9 other chapters where Jesus is doing a ton. Looking at Jesus' 3 years of ministry, I don't envy it at all. I would be stressed out. Clearly some of his apostles were stressed out, Judas being the number 1 stressed out guy. And clearly, Jesus gets stressed out sometimes too. We have that beautiful picture in the Garden of Gethsemane where he knows he's about to go to jail. He knows he's about to get killed. He sees it all coming. And so he stresses so hard, sweat and blood come out. Ooh, that's ominous. If I had like a really good point right there, that would have been cool. And so we see here in verse 38, while they were traveling, he entered a village. Again, I think you and I gloss over some of the tiny details about Jesus' life and surroundings. The guy walked everywhere. He went city to city. There were not a lot of days off. We don't get a whole bunch of pictures where they're just out hanging out doing, sand volleyball like guys on Top Gun. They're always going. And they're always broke. And they're always running into new people. My regular day job, I get to run into new people all the time. It is a drain to be excited to see new people after new people after new people, and wondering, do I have to remember this name? Will I see them again? Do I have to show I care right now? Or can I just mentally check out and just nod my head and go, yeah, that's interesting. Wow. So nice to meet you. See ya. But one of the things that I now get the joy of is after all these random events I do throughout the community is I'm drained. It just takes my battery all the way down. I used to not be that way. It used to be fun and exciting, except when Lilo and Stitch was on, like I said earlier. Then I got weird. But I miss being able to just have that energy, that social battery. Jesus is 33, 32 at this point. He's getting the draining that we all get. What does he do when he gets drained? There's a great quote by a Renaissance scholar and theologian, Erasmus. He said this: Jesus sought the city for the sake of his people. Then he sought the mountains for the sake of his own heart. He divided his time between the ministry of mercy and the ministry of prayer. Jesus has lots of stories, including that one in the garden where he knows he's about to die, where he presses pause on everyone and everything, and he just goes to the Father. Doesn't matter where he is, doesn't matter what's going on. He was an expert at being able to hit the pause button and get away from everyone. Again, you really see that in the Garden of Gethsemane, that late Thursday night before he dies, where he just says to his closest friends, I just need help even praying. I'm so stressed out, I need your help. So he recruits 3 men to go with him to pray. And he gives one of the most epic prayers of all time. And the other 3, they're so stressed out as well, they just fall asleep. But again, it goes to show us there is a way with handling all these things. And I want to be very clear in this study as we go through it the next 3 weeks. This isn't a calling to just drop all responsibilities. This isn't a calling to say, God, take away all the things I have to do. This is a call to, in the middle of all the things I have to do, be my priority. Be my reason for doing all these things. Be the reason I get the energy to do all of this. So I want us to be clear. There will be times God calls us to stop doing specific things for good. But it might be time where God's calling you to expand your capacity to do these things. But remember, in all your priorities, He is the number one priority for each and every task. That there is no priority where He isn't the focus. So that goes to number 3. Daily devoting. In verse 42, Jesus tells Martha, only one thing is necessary. And this is where I think you and I need to really adopt this thought. You don't have to be great at every task. Maybe every task does need to get done, but you don't have to be great at it. The main thing is you have to be great at is loving Jesus with all your heart, loving your neighbor as yourself. If you are doing those two things well, you're doing really well. It's when we put those things off to the side to focus on the task, that's when we're running into this, I'm not sick, but I'm not well. So how do we make sure we're doing that? And that is through the daily devoting. He wants to be with you in your hardest times. And you can kind of see that in this discussion with Jesus. Just the fact that He says Martha's name's twice is such a compassionate way of getting her attention and focus back to the center of where it should be, which is Him. Anytime Jesus ever says the same word twice, it's for you and I, the reader, to really perk up our own attention. It is to call focus. This would be the Hebrew way of putting it in all caps or putting it in bold. This was Him saying. And so the bold phrase He's saying is just her name. He's calling out to her. Come to where your sister's already figured out to be. Come sit at my feet and just listen and learn. Jesus wants to be with you in these crazy, hectic times. Jesus wants to be by your side. He wants to be on your team helping you get all these things done. But a lot of times we just don't feel that. We don't believe that. We don't accept that. We don't know how to be loved that way. Because in every one of our relationships, anytime you ask somebody else to help you in your stress, it feels like you're burdening them. And so it's hard to believe sometimes that Jesus doesn't feel any burden loving and helping us. He thrives in loving and helping us. But more than that, He wants you to want Him even during your hard times. Because that's what He did to us. When He was on the cross suffering the stress of the entire universe, of heaven and hell, He made a lot of time to think about you and to tell you how much He loves you. So He has this model for us to follow, but also this model for us to believe. There's nothing you're doing, there's nothing you're failing at, there's no responsibility you're dropping so hard that causes Jesus to go, ew, gross, what's wrong with you? There's nothing you're doing that's causing Jesus to go, I just want to spend a little more distance between us. There's absolutely zero thing you can do to cause Jesus to go, I want less of you. If anything, all the hectic, all the crazy is causing Jesus to go, man, I want to be more in their life. I want to be more in their way, helping. I want them more. There's a new thing out there. It's called neurotheology, and this is just kind of the study of looking at the Bible and neuroscience and seeing where they accidentally meet to science. Dr. Andrew Newberg, he put it this way. He said, practicing focus meditative prayer for just 12 minutes a day for 8 weeks straight can significantly increase activity in the interior cortex, the part of the brain responsible for empathy and emotional regulation, while simultaneously lowering cortisol, the stress hormone, by up to 60%. 12 minutes a day, just being in front of Jesus, receiving his love, and loving him back. There's a moth. So let me say that again. 12 minutes a day, just receiving Jesus' love. Do you even know how to receive his love? That's what we'll be spending the next couple weeks on. But then giving your love back to him. And just thinking about him. Thinking about the great promises he's given us. Just putting our hopes back onto him. And then just letting him have you and have your attention. And to give you all his love. So that brings me to my final thought of the day. What tasks aren't you sitting at his feet in your heart and mind these days? What tasks have you not said, Jesus, I want you to be the main reason of it? What priorities are coming in front or before loving Jesus and being loved by him? What holds you back from receiving Jesus' love, especially in the midst of high stress? What are the things that are keeping you from enjoying what he has for you? And we can always say, well, I just have too much going on. But even here in this moment, Jesus isn't saying you need to stop doing the work. But he is saying you need to enjoy him while you do the work. So we're going to go to a time of communion. Those of you that are new, we do communion here every week. It's one way that we try to put into practice what we've learned and what we've sung and prayed about today. And so what we like to do when we get together is we like to spend time, number one, thinking about why we do communion. And it is because Jesus told us it's a really great idea, commanded us to do it, and commanded us to do it in a certain way. The other reason we do it is because it's called communion. It means connect. Connect with Christ, connect with each other as a church. So we want to give you an opportunity to start connecting with him now through personal prayer. A lot of you have come in, some of you already told me, a lot of you have come in here with a lot of burdens and a lot of distractions. You have lots of things going on that are important and can't be stopped. So now is a great time to practice what Jesus practiced himself, which is when his stress was the highest, stop everything and just enjoy him again. So that's why we do communion every Sunday, is just to make sure we always have this time to stop everything and focus on him. And the way we are told and commanded to focus on him, we have the verses on the screen that remind us exactly how we're commanded to do that, which is the bread. As you go up there, you're going to rip a piece of it off the loaf, and it's to remind you of Jesus' body, which was ripped to shreds for us. With the whips, with the thorns in his skull, with the nails in his hands and feet, with the spear in his side. Scripture says he was unable to be recognized the way he gets beat up that glorious day that he saved us. So as you rip that piece of bread off and you feel that texture of that ripping, you hear it just a little bit, that sound, it's supposed to remind you of what he did for you. And you're going to take that piece of bread and you're going to dip it in the wine or the grape juice, whichever you prefer. And you're going to see that dark red color, and it's to remind you of his blood, his perfect blood that knew no sin, so that he could become all of sin in our place, taking the punishment of God and protecting us from the punishment of God. It is that perfect love, and in that color you see the perfect love on display. That perfect love that drives out all fear. And so as you look at that, and then you'll taste it, you'll smell it, and And then you're going to crush it between your teeth, because again, it cannot be forgotten that the Son was crushed because of our sin. And as you think about that and as you ingest it into your body, it's to remind you how when you put all of your faith, all of your burden on Him, and zero faith and zero burden on you to make yourself right with God, but all your faith on Him to make you right with God, then you now know you live with that forever, and you walk with that forever, knowing that perfect love will never be taken from you because of what was done in that blood. So we celebrate that today, we celebrate that every day, but we want to take time for you to now spend time alone in prayer. I'm going to lead you in a prayer. I'm not going to say amen. And then when you feel ready, when you're done praying right where you are, you can come up and participate. Or if you need somebody to talk to, I'll be over here by the coffee area. But we want you to take time to connect with Jesus yourself right now, to thank Him, to enjoy His love for you, and to ask Him for help. So let's do that. Father, we thank You for this opportunity to stop everything that we have going on and just be with You. We thank You and praise You that You're not far away to do that, that You're not hard to get a hold of, that we don't have to schedule You through some sort of planner, but that You are always there, always ready to help. So Jesus, we come to You now, thanking You, praising You for all the work that You have done to make this way for us. Now we just ask that You would continue to help make this way in us so that we might walk in it and that we might help others as well. So Jesus, use this time, lead us by Your Holy Spirit to where You want us to go, to confess what You want us to confess, and to receive what You want us to receive. I ask these things in Jesus' name.